So, you just began reading fantasy books and you're looking for new books to try. First of all, I have to recommend... We will just get into it. I don't want to waste your time. The Fellowship of the Ring. The Fellowship of the Ring is the OG of the OG of the OGs in fantasy. This book is the definition of fantasy. It literally created what we today consider mainstream fantasy. This book just has to be here, mainly because of not only how important it is, but number two, how lovable all the cast is, especially the Fellowship. Not so much as Boromir, but you will grow to love everyone in the Fellowship. Not just Frodo, not just Samwise. You love every one of them. Lord of the Rings. Taking that out of the way, let's talk about the other books that you could be reading. If you are a modern reader, these are the following books that will really be entertaining to you. Do you love Peaky Blinders? I also love Peaky Blinders, and what I want you to do is pick up Lies of Lamora or Dresden Files. These two books are so beautiful because basically, specifically Lies of Lamora, it is basically what if Peaky Blinders had a bit of magic, a bit of salsa of magic, right? A sprinkle of magic, dose of magic, okay? And Lies of Lamora, not only is it just, amazing story, but it is not high fantasy. High fantasy, like the Lord of the Rings, has an issue for newbie readers because it is very difficult for them to pick up a lot of the, just the overload of world building. The world building in Lies of Lamora is not vast, it is not huge, it doesn't cover several continents or several realms or planets or whatever. It is basically just one city called Camor, and it is a city infested with drugs and it's a city invested with a lot of criminals, okay, and gangs. And we follow this group called Gentlemen Bastards. So what I recommend is that you pick up this book, and it is actually the first book that I recommend that you pick up out of this entire list. Unlike the Fellowship, if you're a modern reader, unlike the Fellowship of the Ring, this one will actually, you'll find yourself very easy to get into, okay? Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, it's just very high fantasy. There is an insane learning curve. But Lies of Lamora, you're just in there. The first sentence, the first pages, there is nothing for you to learn, no locations, nothing. You just basically follow a normal story, following a normal child. So Lies of Lamora is the perfect introduction to the genre. Another perfect introduction to the genre, which is in our world, urban fantasy, is Dresden Files. I believe this one is genuinely a beautiful introduction to the genre of fantasy because you see, it starts here, it introduces you to some, magical terms, and you'll get yourself familiar with fantasy in general. And you'll see how when added to our world, it can have a different effect. And so Dresden Files, much like Lies of Lamora, these two are beautiful introductions to the genre. Not only that, but they are very easy to get into. Like, you read that first chapter or the first opening of, Dresden Files, where the mailman comes in, it is extremely easy to get into, okay? But a lot of other stories, the opening line, it just feels like there's so much more that you don't know. But the opening line to Lies of Lamora, as well as, Dresden Files, you just know, because these are human things, human struggles, normal human struggles. So these two books are perfect for newcomers. But then there's a second layer of books that are perfect for newcomers. The first one is actually going to introduce you to how modern fantasy works. And it is actually the first book of Brandon Sanderson called Elantras. This book has hard magic system, it has fast-paced plot, and it has, prose that is minimal and mostly skeletal. And generally speaking, this is the trend of modern fantasy. Modern fantasy has fast plot, it has, technically speaking, it does have in-depth world building. However, a lot of the world building is glossed over. People don't focus on the world building as much as they used to. So generally speaking, nowadays, this book will serve as a perfect introduction to modern fantasy. If you read Elantras, you will really get a good idea of what modern fantasy looks like. And I think it's the perfect modern fantasy book with a hard magic system, minimal prose, and, basically likable characters that you can vote for. It is basically modern fantasy is like this. Okay, so Elantras will serve as a perfect introduction. And then there's the following book, which is, Assassin's Apprentice. the first book in the Farseer trilogy. The reason why I have this is because, you see, it is a perfect introduction to more in-depth, detailed fantasy. You see, Farseer has enough fantasy that you can follow it and you can pick it up, and the learning curve is not insane, but also it has enough fantasy to get you to familiarize with the learning process, with some terminology as well that are used across the entire genre, right? And so it is the perfect introduction once you finish Assassin's Apprentice, and you can pick up the second book and the third book, and after the entire trilogy, first of all, you will be crying a lot of the time, but secondly, you can jump from there to actually high fantasy, and it will be the perfect introduction to high fantasy. So Elantras is the perfect introduction to modern fantasy, in my opinion. And then, the Assassin's Apprentice, the Farseer books, all of them, they are the perfect introduction to, high fantasy. Lies of Lamora and Dresden Files, they're just good books that anyone can pick up and have no issue from whichever genre you come from and whichever genre you have been reading predominantly. You can just pick up these two books and have no issue following everything that is happening. So those are the books, those are the 5 books, 2 of them, then 2, then 1, The Fellowship of the Rings, because it's the Fellowship of the Rings, so yeah, that's generally going to be it for this video. Those are the introductions, the perfect newbie books from the fantasy genre that I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a nice day.